So, board games are much more interesting than you think they are because they can do at least this one thing. They can make strangers at the party to start cooperating productively. And this is not an easy thing to do. If you take five people, let's say, who barely know each other, and if you ask them to start doing something together for 40 minutes, they're not necessarily going to be happy about it. Yes, and even more, they're not necessarily will like doing it. There should be something specific which would grab their attention, which would keep them being interested and even enthusiastic about the game, which would keep them going, even though they barely know the people who play with them. Um, and you can say, well, of course, people who are playing the board games, they usually want to socialize, they want to spend time with each other, um, they want to have fun. And so this is external motivation, and it's nothing about the board game in itself. It's just people want to have a rest and just um, spend time together. And I would say if it would be so, then there would be no apparent need for the rewards in the game, for the rules in the game, for the things necessarily in the game, right? But in most games, especially in board games, we have in-game um, rewards. We have in-game goal, and so um, let's consider this. Let's think, what is that about the board games, which that allows it to make people cooperate together productively. This is like something like to have fun, um, to satisfy their desires while being interested in doing so genuinely and not being forced into doing it. So what is that about the game? So, well, in board games we have all these physical objects. We have figures, cards, um, the board, and these objects are just there for us to interact with, right? In themselves, they are not making us necessarily to just engage with people productively and like interact with them to achieve something, because we can interact with these objects in all sorts of different ways. This is the primary reason. Um, just as we also can with other objects, like with any other objects, there are all sorts of different ways to interact with them, and um, that's why it's not enough. The objects in themselves aren't enough. There should be something else. The important part of the board games, as we know it to be, are generally rules or instructions, right? Um, and we know it because we can also play the games that consist just with these rules or instruction, like icebreakers, let's say. With icebreakers, we don't necessarily even need the board or the cards or anything else. We can have only like ourselves. We can play with numbers. We can play with explaining the words. We can play with our own gestures. So there can be different games which don't even need like small physical objects, the tiny pieces or a board. And it's generally because anyway we have at least something to interact with. Okay, so then what is it in the board games that actually makes the game, the play happen? And if it's the rules, then why is it so? What is it about the rules which makes it possible? So, well, first of all, let's even describe what are the rules. And usually people think about the rules like some sorts of constraints, things we should or shouldn't do. And this is also one way of viewing it, because rules are the constraints. So rules are basically uh, stated or clearly defined, laid down um, agreement on how do we mm, understand things, how do we um, view things in the game, and how can we interact with things in the game, and for what purpose, right? So there are sorts of rules or instructions that describe what those pieces are, and there are other rules that say what can be done with them and for which purpose, and who is the winner, and what condition should apply. Right. And then to play a game, we need to agree to all together that this is holds. And then if we agree that this holds, we can cooperate productively. Right? Um, but if we would just try to interact spontaneously in any manner we want to, we would be confused. So, in a way, the rules are constraining. They are defining precisely, they're telling us specifically what should be done. Um, and and we agree to follow it. We agree to see this in a certain way. Uh, like we agree to see chess pieces in a certain way. We agree to that they have a certain option for movements, etc. Because when we agree, we can do things together. We can um, have a shared knowledge, a common ground, and we can play together, right? Because if we, the alternative is that we don't know what it is, or we don't know what the other person thinks about it, we don't know what to do with it, and or we don't know what the other person can or want to do with it. So we're just basically confused because this is not clearly laid down. We need to observe, we need to negotiate maybe, and it takes time, it takes energy, it perhaps takes some conflicts to go through. It's just costly. But when you have already clearly defined outline rules, you can now mm, align your interpretation and expectations of each other. You can now agree on what you're seeing, on what should be done, and what should be received if you will do it, right? Um, and because if you don't know what it is, um, or how the other person sees it, then what can you even do with it? And then let's imagine, well, you know what it is, but there are all sorts of different ways of what to do with that. and you don't know the specific ways how to interact with it, then it's also would take you some time to figure that out. And then you also, meanwhile you're doing it, you would need to figure out whether it's actually worth doing, or whether you are not interested in doing so. And well, all of that already would take you so much time wasted, right? And that would take you time to kind of establish the game, establish what could be done. And it is like that in any other sort of cooperative group activity also. You just need to establish those things. And so in the board games, we already have it laid down, we already have it specified, we already have those constraints, but they are good and positive because they direct us exactly what on what we can do, versus the alternative of like doing anything, you know. And anything is quite a lot. It's quite a lot. It's maybe even too much to handle. So you want to constraints to know what to do specifically. And rules are constraining. They, but they are also uh, constrained to give you direction. They narrow down all possibilities into a small manageable field. Um, and they narrow down they already outline to you the potential rewards, so you wouldn't need to waste time to figure that out. And they all outline to you the possible actions, so they provide you the direction, the path. And you need this path, and you need this direction, and you need even the outlined um, rewards. Even if you have your just interest to have fun, you still need a goal and reward in the game. Because why? Because each second you're playing it, you kind of need to be interested as well. Something has, and you need to be genuinely interested, something. And for it to happen, something has to grab your attention. So in the game there should be like also laid down feedback or reward system, which would keep your attention in check, attached, right? And so that's what the rules in the board game outline. What should be done, in which way, and for what purpose. And well, if you just put any strangers at the table again, and if you would simply ask them to do anything, they would be lost. Just spend 40 minutes doing anything together. They would be lost because they would then need to figure out, think what exactly to do. They would need to consider all the alternatives, which are like huge, and they would even need to figure out what alternatives do participants have in their minds. So this is a lot of negotiation and a lot of time spent figuring out. They would also need to understand whether the other participants even they would still need to establish again the rules, a shared knowledge, a shared understanding. And they would still need other participants also agree on um, on following it. Because obviously if we're do something shared, mutual, if you don't want really to do it, then how can we do it productively? But if I don't even know what we could be doing, how can I know if you want even to do it, right? So I first should define everything and outline what can be done, and then I should kind of negotiate with you whether you're interested. And so all of that still has to be defined, uh, and stated and communicated if people, of course, want to cooperate productively as the group. And well, the board games already have it in themselves, the list of rules or instructions. And that's actually what we can learn. We can learn the things that we need to start working efficiently. And we can also understand, well, why do we need it? Why do we need this instruction and rules? Well, because what do you know? There are like all sorts of all kinds of ways in which people can understand the things, in which people can all kinds of things people can do with the thing. So what do you know? You have no idea what exactly they would like to choose, and that has to be negotiated anyway if you want to do anything productive with people. You have negotiate if you align in your understanding of things. You have to communicate what should be done and for what motivations, because if people are not interested, they would be just leaving, just as in the game. If people playing the game fail to um, understand the rules, fail to see what the game is about, or they are not interested in what it is about, then they are just simply leave. Or they try to mess with you and maybe stop you from playing. I don't know. But you wouldn't have the productive cooperation. So knowledge, constraints, motivations have to be clearly laid down and agreed upon, right? So people could cooperate efficiently. And that's why we are generating rules. And that's why the board games or any kinds of games which have, the instructions with the rules, they are so efficient in just making people to do things together and being interested in it. Yeah, so we generate the rules to cooperate efficiently, but it's also why we upgrade the rules, we change the rules, we keep on negotiating and communicating them, because we probably don't want to play one board game all our life, right? This is more uh, in metaphorical sense. But yeah, there's these things to learn from the board games and to see how they, uh, or at least how rules, uh, create this space for productive cooperation.